Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this CMD Adaptive Outdoor Play webinar. I'm Avery Roberts. I'm here alongside Kelly Berger. We both work in community outreach and engagement for CMD and our CMD affected individuals ourselves. We have some really great speakers here for you today, and we're very excited that you are joining us. We want to take a moment to honor and pay tribute to a beloved CMD community member, Olivia Bloomfield. She was such a positive light in our community, and to know Olivia was to be truly changed for the better. Her fearless dedication pushed forward her belief that all children should have equal opportunities, which led her to champion the construction of inclusive playgrounds across Kansas City and beyond. Olivia left an incredible mark on our community and world, was such a beacon of hope, and her vision of a greater inclusive society will forever guide all that we do. She is missed immensely every day. As a brief overview of the agenda for today, what you can expect during today's webinar is a focus on innovative outdoor inclusive spaces for adaptive recreational play. You'll have the opportunity to hear from community members as they share how they championed for their local accessible outlets so that parks, playgrounds, and outdoor spaces can provide fun for all. Now our speakers, Mara KAPLAN, the founder, owner, and play environment specialist of Let Kids Play and disability community member herself, OLENKA VILLARREAL, founder and CEO of the Magical Bridge Foundation and disability community member herself, Jill Moore, inclusive play specialist at Landscape Structures and disability community member herself, and finally, SARA Bloomfield, the executive director of the Olivia Bloomfield Foundation, Olivia's mom, and CMD community member. We so appreciate you all being here with us today. Unfortunately, Mara cannot join us live, but she sent in a pre-recording that we will be sharing with you all now of a brief overview of accessible playgrounds and her platform, Let Kids Play.
Hi, my name is Mara KAPLAN. I run a company called Let Kids Play, and I'm an inclusive playground specialist. I have been doing inclusive play since my son was about 3 years old. He is now 30, so I've been doing this for a very long time. And my goal is to help you and other communities create inclusive playgrounds where all of our kids can play together. I believe really strongly in the idea of being able to use our community assets. Our community assets should be for everyone in the community, and we as parents should not have to go to two different places with our two different types of kids. And that's what got me into this and is what has kept me in it. Let me tell you a little bit about the different terminologies about playgrounds that you might hear. So first of all, there's ADA compliant playgrounds. And any playground that you see that's being built today should be ADA compliant. It is no big deal to be ADA compliant. It is the law. It is what everyone should be following. And so if you see a newspaper article that says, we're so excited we've put in our first ADA compliant playground, my question to that community would be, okay, when are you going to go beyond ADA? ADA deals a lot with getting to the playground and around the playground, but not necessarily playing at the playground. The next term you will often hear is accessible playgrounds. And in my mind, accessible playgrounds are what we do for people who use wheelchairs. It is about being accessible. Inclusive and accessible are really different terms. Accessible is about getting to and on the equipment. So we have an accessible swing that provides more support. We have ramps. We have unitary surfacing, all of which helps us keep our playgrounds accessible. But then when we get to inclusive playgrounds or universal design playgrounds, which I view as similar terminology, we are looking at how kids can actually play. And it's not just kids with disabilities, it's kids of all abilities and how they can play and interact together. So you must have an accessible playground in order to have an inclusive or a universal design playground, but accessible playground doesn't necessarily need to be an inclusive playground. There are lots to think about in an inclusive playground. How are we going to add sensory, putting in a fence, zoning it, lots of issues that go way beyond accessibility. That's what I really concentrate on when I work with a community. I also run a website called accessibleplaygrounds.net, and on that website is a directory of accessible playgrounds. Now I'm going to tell you that I have not been to all of these playgrounds, and they're both accessible and inclusive playgrounds, and I try, based on the research that I've done on the playground, to let you know what is at that playground and how inclusive it is. But one of the ways you can be very helpful is if there is an inclusive playground or an accessible playground in your community, add it. You can go in, there's an add a playground, you add it, I'll approve it, it will go up, and then more people will know about it. And because you've actually played at it, you're able to tell us what actually works and doesn't work at that playground. The other thing you can do if you're building a playground, reach out to me. My email is mara@letkidsplay.com. I'm happy to do a free first consultation session, tell you more about what I think inclusive playgrounds are, and tell you about my services. And every community should have at least one inclusive playground in my mind, if not more. Let's have lots of great play.
Next, I'm going to turn things over to OLENKA to share more on building inclusive communities, specifically in the niche space of adaptive outdoor play.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So nice to be here and nice to hear from Mara. So I am OLENKA, and like many wonderful causes around the world, mine started with a personal family situation. I have two girls, one with and without disabilities. And I was looking for a playground that both of them could play at. And as such, I was sort of in a position to be able to create something new, because I was looking indeed online, and I was looking for places that were welcoming to both of my girls and then others in my community, parents that were using wheelchairs, friends that had children with autism. And it was through a lot of extensive research that we created a first playground that really does serve members of the community that reflect all the disabilities and abilities that are all around us. And when we talk about inclusive at a Magical Bridge, inclusive means everyone. And so in the short time that I have with you and the audience today, I'd like to take a few minutes and show you a clip of a video that takes you to a Magical Bridge experience, which will explain why we do what we do, and then we'll go on a little bit more after that.
Today, 1 in 4 people in the United States are living with a disability. An estimated 10% of disabilities are visible, such as using a wheelchair, while 90% of these disabilities are invisible, such as autism and some developmental, cognitive, and sensory disabilities. Playgrounds are at the heart of the community and offer profound social, developmental, and cognitive benefits. And while most playgrounds are deemed legally accessible, most do not consider the needs of everyone in the community. Typical playgrounds often have sand or tan bark, hard-to-reach platforms and equipment, and restrictive pathways with little to no opportunity to move, swing, slide, or spin. Magical Bridge Foundation designs playgrounds for all ages and abilities because everyone deserves a place to play, explore, move, and connect. At Magical Bridge Playgrounds, children, adults, and seniors can all play together. It's a place where inclusive means everyone. Since 2016, Magical Bridge has innovated multi-generational playgrounds, parks, and programs for more inclusive communities. Magical Bridge currently has 8 playgrounds open to the public around the world, including 4 destination playgrounds in Palo Alto, Redwood City, Sunnyvale, and Morgan Hill. After opening 2 playgrounds at Palo Alto schools, we are passionate to bring much-needed inclusive play and movement to more schools. Many more are on the way, including playgrounds in Santa Clara and Mountain View. Our first international playground opened in December 2023 in New Zealand, with 2 more in development in Singapore. We're thrilled that our list of playgrounds and partners is growing, which means that more people can play together. The foundation of Magical Bridge playgrounds are the play zones, which offers greater predictability for visitors. Each zone is dedicated to a play experience, such as spinning, sliding, and swinging. Our Musical Innovation Zone enables visitors to create beautiful orchestra music with a 24-string laser harp. Our playhouse and community stages are designed by Bay Area local artist builder Barbara Butler. These thoughtfully crafted spaces are ideal for imaginative play, relaxation, and community connections. The Kindness Corner, a hallmark of Magical Bridge, reminds visitors of all ages and abilities that they are welcomed and celebrated. Our beloved kindness ambassadors are the heart and soul of Magical Bridge playgrounds and programs. These community volunteers, adults and teens of all abilities, host and organize events and activities, and most importantly, play with visitors and spread kindness on and off the playground. We welcome local artists, musicians, storytellers, and magicians to perform on the community stage throughout the year. There is always something to do at Magical Bridge. It's never too early to spread kindness, and each day we strive to make our magical community a little bit bigger. We are grateful for the ongoing recognition about the impact our playgrounds have on communities we serve, and await the day when creating playgrounds for everyone is no longer innovative. Until that day comes, Magical Bridge is ready to be part of your community to help create magical connections for everyone. From all of us at Magical Bridge, thank you for celebrating kindness and inclusive play. We hope to see you on the playground.
Okay, well, let's get back in. So what that video would show you is a cross-section of the different Magical Bridge playgrounds that exist here and sort of around the world. And what we believe, which I would imagine the community we have online believes as well, is that it is important that everyone's included in a community, right? So every 4th person does have a visible or invisible disability. And while many are wheelchair users in your community and around the world, there are so many disabilities that at the moment are not included in both playground design and really programming around different communities. And so I found myself in a situation where I had the opportunity to really reimagine what does a playground for everyone look like, sort of not, accessible, inclusive elements. That's something, we see a lot. We really do believe everyone should have full access to everything. And this is what I call sort of a generic image of a typical public playground. We have it, of course, in black and white because this is not what we consider to be very magical. There's a lot of things that make this unwelcoming to everyone in a community, right? So movement is so important for many, many individuals at all ages, right? So people with autism benefit from swinging. People that have ADHD, the spinning motion is often providing them the same feedback as Ritalin might. So we really believe it's very important to have a lot of variation. Of course, pathways are important. Equipment, we steer clear of the chunky, bright plastics. We feel like that really screams little kids, and we do make a point to create multi-generational playgrounds where parents, grandparents, and everyone from all ages can enjoy retreat spaces. These types of playgrounds that we see around the communities and in schools don't provide places for somebody with autism that needs to get away from the frenetic pace or from the noise. We also think it's important, of course, to have the shade. The fill on the bottom, the tan bark is actually compliant to ADA law, but it isn't friendly to wheelchairs. And remarkably, it is interesting that these two-level structures that are all over really the world are accessible to law because there is a little hook on the bottom of a step, which is called a transfer platform, and it is deemed to be acceptable to people that you just pull yourself off of a wheelchair and sit there and then either pull yourself up or you just sit and watch people pass by. So Mara mentioned borders of, many playgrounds are very close to public busy streets. And so people can run off either that have autism or even little kids. So what you didn't see in that video, I would have showed you, but sadly, if you're interested, please do either visit or see the video. But Magical Bridge, really inclusive, means everyone. And we found ourselves doing the research, up and down the internet to try to find a playground that really spoke to us as a place that really was magical for everyone, not just for people with disabilities or without disabilities. But, so we find ourselves saying that we don't just advocate for inclusive spaces and playgrounds and programs. We actually are creating them. And the first one did open in 2015 through a very valiant effort with a bunch of volunteers that I spearheaded. We raised the money for it, and we really thought this would be an example of what happens when you really create a place that's thoughtful for everyone, for the parents who use a wheelchair, who need to have a place to go with their community, for the children, for the grandparents. And with it, of course, is important to consider the programming. We currently, since we started less than 10 years ago, we're on our 10th playground, opening these and others that are under development around the world. And as Mara also mentioned, creating the zones is something that we did the research for and discovered that, predictability matters, right? So predictability for people with autism, vision, and just the enjoyment of a space to know that wherever you go and whatever you experience, you will see and enjoy or experience what you need for your body, for your social connections. We have these zones that we create, and we have others that we add to. I want to be mindful of time, but there's a lot of just thoughtfulness that goes into all the Magical Bridge spaces that we do. We have found that the playground industry is not as innovative as we would like, and so we find ourselves sort of coming up with new ways to make the play magical for everyone. We have a little bench on the bottom of our slides that we patented, and we see that now being copied by manufacturers, and we're happy to see our work in the, as a small foundation out in the communities. This hideaway hut that you see, this wooden addition to each of the Magical Bridge playgrounds, this actually came about because we found that in the industry, there's really one or two items available to really address the 1 in 34 now that have autism all around us. And so these plastic balls that you sit in, we didn't feel were terribly sensory friendly or magical. So we have this beautiful hideaway hut where there's a bench in there, it's wheelchair accessible, there's some sensory elements. And we typically place a few of these inside the Magical Bridge so that when that guest gets overwhelmed, overstimulated, they have a place to relax and enjoy. We have signage and wayfinding. And in addition to the spaces that we create, we also have a really wonderful focus on programming because we like to amplify the message that it is for all ages, it is for all abilities. And so we have kindness ambassador volunteers that are either teens or retired adults or taking on the loneliness crisis that we're experiencing where older adults don't feel connected to their community. We have tremendous amount of activities and events. We highlight people of varying abilities, so it normalizes it in a community that you see people, you experience different kinds of skills and talents that come in all sizes and so on. And we have a lot of downloadable information that we're proud of offering to schools and so on. Magical Bridge tends to be very, very busy. We tend to have between 20 and 25,000 guests that visit each of these Magical Bridge spaces on a monthly basis. And a typical size is maybe 3/4 of an acre to an acre for the destination playgrounds. But we also create school playgrounds now. We have found ways to do that cost effectively, neighborhood parks, and we have been recognized in many different ways. And I will say, one of the things that I sort of believe maybe some of your families will agree with, that we should be further along with our playground innovations. We should be further along. It should not be so unusual to look for inclusive or accessible. And, when you see there is plenty of material out there that talks about the benefits of play for all ages and abilities. But then when you look at the big reveal, like where is that playground? It's really few and far between. So we really invite everybody to advocate for more spaces that include the whole family. And that's really where we feel the magic happens. And so we are not partial to any particular equipment. We can work with anybody because it isn't an afterthought. We sort of design from the ground up. We consider everything, and we just don't plop a couple of accessible pieces of equipment into our spaces. And we welcome everyone to get to know us and to visit and to invite us into your community. And I thank you for your kind attention. Apologize about the video not working, but we'll provide that in the link in a moment.
I'm going to kick things over now to Jill to walk us through how to begin the inclusive play space process of designing and acquiring funds. Take it away, Jill.
Super glad to be here. I think this is a really a cool conversation, and especially, I mean, with OLENKA and to have Mara involved, this is truly just learning from the greats in the industry around inclusion. So my name is Jill. I work with Landscape Structures. We are a manufacturer, but I myself have a disability, and so my role specifically is to explore inclusive play from this really, really authentic space of, again, like OLENKA and Mara, and people who have these personal connections to making a space inclusive for everybody. I think my role is pretty cool that it gets to come from the heart. I grew up with a disability, and so playgrounds were really not somewhere that my family would take me. I'm shocking no one. I was a super loud child. I was very big personality, really, really competitive. I wanted to be a part of play. But whenever we went to the playground, that's not where we were going to see those things about me. And so falling into this industry, it was really, really challenging at first because for a while, I was promoting something that I never was invited to as a child. And so with Landscape Structures, I think I fell into the really cool manufacturer because I think they do things in a really authentic way. Steve King, he was the founder of Landscape Structures. He was the designer of combat or playground structures as a whole. That was his idea to really put them together. And it was actually on the Access Board to create the ADA laws for the playground space. So Landscape Structures, I mean, I'm pretty proud of it. Inclusion has been in our blood for a very long time. So this picture here, this was a product. This was our swing that I got to help develop. And this swing was created with this idea of on wheels, walking, whatever you have. It can be included in the play space. You can get that face-to-face connection, and you can just play like everybody else. So growing up, again, I was a pretty fierce little kiddo, but the playground really wasn't somewhere that was going to show all those wonderful things about me. So I did get heavily involved in adaptive sport. And over here on the left, this was my very first 5K I did, and I did that with my grandma. I'm about 90% sure she lapped me. And this is trying out for the USA team in 2016 for wheelchair racing. So play was really, really integral. Play is really, really valuable. And I think that's what's really cool about being with this group of people is that understanding that play isn't just something that we do to go have fun. It's inherent to growth. We need play to become healthy people. We need play as adults. And so play really has always held a very, very valuable part of my life. It's just rarely on the playground. So again, the playground was somewhere that was really challenging for me. I was crawling, I was using different mobility aids. So more often than not, the only person I could get to really hang out with me was my mom. So this is Patty sporting her corporate casual. But with that, we talk a lot about this in the world of disability. So I'm sure again, I'm preaching to the choir, but Growing up, and I think a lot of us have felt this, especially connected to this community, we lived in this world of the medical model of disability, where we were the ones that needed to be fixed. We were the ones that needed to be made more able. But as we progress and as we talk about inclusive spaces, as we design for inclusion, people are really growing to realize that it's not the person, it's not my abilities that are wrong, it's the environment. As we switch to that social model of disability. And I really, really love that because it takes the blame off of the user. So I think in that inclusive space, and as we create inclusive playgrounds, we're really switching to this social model of disability, where people can just come to a space and bring what they have to offer, instead of trying to figure out all the ways that they need to change to be able to activate and utilize this space. And Olenka said it really, really well. When we design for inclusion, we're not just designing for people with disabilities. Sure, we're thinking about people with disabilities, but we're designing for everyone. I went to an event last year and I was chatting. It was a Miracle League event. So Miracle League, they build baseball fields, and alongside the baseball field, they typically build an inclusive playground so that these families have somewhere to go, something to do more than just baseball during the week. And I was chatting with the mom of a player, and she was telling me that the inclusive playground, whenever she goes there, she tells all those typicals that they have to get off the playground, that the typicals, they need to leave. This playground is designed for her daughter and only her daughter, and so they need to get out unless they have a disability. And the things I took away from that, I was like, one, that's my new favorite slur, the typicals. Two, how awful does that feel for the child? To know that because of your disability, you're the reason somebody else has to leave, that's icky. So when we design for inclusion, we think about everybody. I want to create a playground that's just as captivating for me as it is for everybody else in this call, and we're all going to need different things. So when we design from this holistic perspective of when we work with a community, when we look at designs, we talk a lot about different needs and how we can answer for that. So this is designing for children with autism. This is designing for children with ADHD, something that's pretty common, pretty prolific. We figured out when we're learning from occupational therapists and experts in this space, how do we create things that are going to answer for this and create a really captivating experience for every ability? Something that's like my new rabbit hole, I think it's really, really cool, is designing for blind, low vision and deaf, hard of hearing. If we are missing one sensory experience, how do we engage our other senses to still have a meaningful connection with a space or wherever we're going? I think that this space is really cool in particular. I just recently learned that only about 8% of users who are blind can actually read Braille. And so if we rely on Braille alone to dictate how do we create for a space, we're really missing the mark on a lot of different people. And so that's what I think is so exciting about this space, is there's a lot to learn and a lot of really cool people to learn from. And again, so this is pulled from the U.S. Department of Education. And so, as said, as Mara mentioned, a playground is designed to be ADA. That's old news. Most playgrounds are ADA compliant if they have been built after 2010. They have to be by law. And ADA really on the playground specifically only targets those orthopedic disabilities. It only really targets our wheelchair users. It doesn't necessarily think about everyone else like we just discussed. So when we go into that realm of inclusive, it's so much bigger than, okay, just throw in a ramp for the sake of having a ramp. It's a really big group of people with all sorts of different needs are going to want to use this space, and they're going to want to have a place to go. So this is an image. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice this weekend. This is an image of a playground we put in. So this is a fantastical example, but this is the largest inclusive playground in the world. It went in North Charleston, so if you're ever down that way, it's certainly worth a visit. But what I really want to show about this is this was a really big community undertaking. And this community has done some really cool stuff. They have a community center nearby, and they employ mostly adults with disabilities to run the community center. So the playground was a really cool connection to creating a more inclusive community. But I want to showcase this because there's so many things for different children here. There's a more quiet area, so if someone starts to get overwhelmed, there's some cozy spots, there's a story trail. If you have a kid who's developing those motor planning skills, or they need that deep climbing proprioceptive input, there's lots of different climbings for lots of different challenge levels, lots of different skill levels. So this is an example that, again, has everything in the book, and not every inclusive playground needs to look like that. But I just think it's a really good statement that we're designing for everybody. So things that you can do, I mean, we get a lot of people who want to create an inclusive playground, and I think some of the most successful things I have seen, from my perspective in the manufacturer lens, one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give people who want to create an inclusive playground are work with your park and rec agency and not against. I have seen a couple park and rec agencies and people who want a more inclusive community. If you come in and butt heads out of the gate, that tends to be not as collaborative. It tends to be we had a group, I was working with somebody and they had come in and they had parents who were just coming in and yelling at the park and rec department. They didn't give them a chance to figure it out or learn. They just said, "You're messing up. You're not inviting my child." And while this is great, I mean, I really do believe you got to advocate for yourself. It did create a lot of tension. And so in this space where I think if we work with, if we're collaborative and say, "Hey, I want you to understand what a day in my life is, what succeeds for my child, what's challenging for my child." I think that tends to work out a lot better. I tend to see a lot more projects come out of it really positive if it's working in collaboration. Inclusive design might need to take a bit of time and energy, but there are ways to get it done. You might not get the big giant destination inclusive playground right out of the gate. It might be making a couple playgrounds over time more inclusive with inclusive features, and that is still good progress. There's nothing to take away from that. That's still a big accomplishment. Connect with the experts. I mean, the people on this panel today have a ton of experience in inclusive play. They've seen a lot of different projects. They're going to be able to help you. They're going to show you what they've learned from past projects that went really, really well or what they want to do better. And we can contribute to that. So connect with people who are in this space. And I think one of the most important thing anybody can do is engage the disability community. There's a movement right now called Nothing About Us Without Us. And that is to say, we cannot design for disabled individuals without lifting their voices up and making sure we're working in collaboration with them. So bring in your stakeholders, learn from them, really utilize them as part of the process to educate your park and rec entities or whoever might be really spearheading the new inclusive campaign. That's valuable. They're going to get some really good knowledge out of that lived experience. And then talking a little bit about funding, because inclusive playgrounds by nature, it tends to be a little bit more expensive. And that is because even the rubber surfacing, the rubber or the turf is significantly more expensive than engineered wood fiber. And so a lot of the times when people come in and say, "Okay, we want this inclusive playground," and the park and rec department can't necessarily respond as we want them to because of a budget, a lot of that goes into surfacing. And as a whole, funding, we've seen a lot of different things. We've seen in-kind donations. That's a really cool way to engage the community. There's a lot of grants in this space. The Land Water Conservation Fund is a massive amount of money that's really just dedicated to funding meaningful outdoor projects. Special events, community groups such as Kiwanis, Rotary Club, community engagement. These two kind of go together of really just using the people who are a part of the project and engaging the community around them. If you get the chance, look up Build Jake's Place. They are a group out of New Jersey who actually helped collaborate and they wrote a law in the state of New Jersey that every county needed to have a inclusive playground to receive any amount of green acres and public funding. So they did a really, really good job of engaging the community, and they really are pushing for a more inclusive state as a whole, because it's pretty cool to see that that's a requirement, is to have an inclusive playground. And then I think something that's really special is getting the kids involved. Kids are really, I mean, who's going to say no to a kid? They're really, really passionate about creating these spaces for everybody. And a prime example of that is we worked with a group. There's a fifth grade class in Minnesota here. They were on CBS. Their story went viral for a little bit, but they wanted to raise enough money to buy an accessible merry-go-round. And instead, they ended up raising over, I think they're over $1 million now. So they have bought their playground and they bought a lot of other equipment that they've donated throughout their school district. And it's just one fifth grade class who really put the pedal to the metal and just really believe in what they're doing. So engaging the people who are really going to be impacted by the space. And so one thing that I do want to highlight about LSI that I'm pretty dang proud of is that recently we took that Nothing About Us Without Us movement to heart. And so we have formed this play club. And so whenever we create new product, we bring in kids with disabilities so that we can learn directly from the experts. They're teaching us what makes the best design possible. And again, I think just the biggest takeaway I would say is integrate those voices, integrate the people it's going to impact, bring in your disability community, and everyone's going to learn from them. And it's typically a much more positive experience. Because inclusive design, I mean, that's the beauty of it, is inclusive design is for absolutely all of us. So Thank you much, and I will pass it to the next sage and wise individual.
Thank you so much, Olenka and Jill. Now I'm going to pass things over to Sarah to take us through how adaptive outdoor play areas became such a passionate area of focus for Olivia and their family, as well as starting from the literal ground up, how other community members can start their own grassroots movements to spark change in the space and create more accessible areas for all.
Thank you, Avery. And it's an honor and a privilege to be here. I am a CMD community member and have been for about 12 and a half years now since Olivia was born. And this community is very important to us and truly always has been. And we're most grateful to be here today and to be talking about this. So let's start with really telling you about myself, and my connection to the disability community is Olivia. And I think many of you here are familiar with her and the work that she did in the community. And really, this is just a small snippet of what Olivia was able to accomplish. And I think we started, like many of the speakers and many of you listening today, in a capacity where we were just trying to figure out how to find play spaces. We moved to Kansas City from Chicago in 2014, and there wasn't a single playground anywhere near us that was accessible. And through a friend of a friend, we were introduced to an organization here in Kansas City called Variety KC, which is a very active organization in the Kansas City community. And at that time, a playground in actually our area in Kansas City called Leawood was being rebuilt, and it was not scoped to have solid servicing or accessible equipment. And a conversation ensued with myself and the executive director, and then Olivia, who was quite the chatterbug, jumped in very quickly and had a lot to say about why this needed to happen. And she actually took this on herself at the age of probably 4, went to Leawood City Hall and was very effective getting grown-ups to understand the importance of play, kind of to Jill's previous point, when people see the actual need, I think that's it's very powerful. That's kind of how it started. And then as Olivia grew, she had a way with words. She was a really good little speaker, and she started understanding the importance of inclusive play, not just for her, but for other people. And so that kind of became our mission. Olivia passed away very suddenly in 2022, so 2 years ago, and we founded the Olivia Bloomfield Foundation at that time. And we founded it really without a plan, because we weren't planning for that to be our reality. But we also knew that Olivia had been so successful and so powerful and created so much change. There were so many people reaching out, kind of, how do we help? What can we do? My husband and I, Matt, founded the Olivia Bloomfield Foundation, and I'm here to share with you some of the things that we have done in Kansas City, and then talk to you guys about, ideas if you are looking to start from scratch, both in the city and then the school districts, because kind of had to tackle those things a little bit differently. So here are some of the projects that we have taken on in the Kansas City area. And that's really been our focus for now. We're kind of a small little guy, but growing, and we're very proud of that, and looking to continue to grow outside of Kansas City and beyond. But always equipment, right? And I think all of you guys know that you've all fought with insurance about the need for multiple wheelchairs or multiple pieces of equipment. And that really is a big piece of inclusion. Olivia was in a power chair. Variety KC was there to help us when we needed a manual chair so that she could get into friends' houses and attend birthday parties. And so we are incredibly passionate about that. through a partnership with a construction firm here in Kansas City, we co-fund a program called the Olivia's Big Splash. This year we completed our second accessible bathroom, where a family with a child with a disability is nominated and then selected, and they get a full bathroom makeover. And as you know, that's a very significant cost and typically not covered by insurance, particularly here in the states of Kansas and Missouri, which is where we serve. It is not covered. And I was very proud that this year it was a CMD community member that received Olivia's Big Splash. We opened a welcome garden at Britain Development, which is a center for infants and toddlers here in Kansas City that services all kids with special needs, all types of special needs. And then spring of 2024, we announced a partnership with the Kansas City Current. And for those of you that aren't familiar, that is the women's professional soccer team here. And we have the Olivia Bloomfield legacy seats there, where we honor different members of the community that are moving forward inclusion for very important topics. We also provided 2 adult-sized changing tables. And there are restrooms on both sides of the stadium so that people with disabilities can be comfortable at the stadium. I wanted to show you guys a little bit about Olivia's welcome garden because money always comes up. And so I wanted to highlight this one because it is an opportunity to provide an inclusive space for less. In this case, these are musical instruments, and you can see we use turf rather than the pour and play. So I wanted to just share that to kind of get creative juices flowing, because I get questions often. How can we have funding? How do we get started? And so I wanted to provide this example for you so you guys could see a visual, and I think this will be available later if anybody has discussions, because I think visuals really, truly do help. And, you know, Olivia always used to say, we can't do everything overnight, but one step is a step in the right direction. So, you know, as you're looking at your own school playground, the playground down the street, what pieces can you modify? And turf is really, it's a big one. Now I wanted to spend a little bit of time on this one, because as I said, this is the biggest question I get asked, is like literally from the ground up, what do I do? I'm overwhelmed. It's really expensive. I think Jill touched on this before. Kids' voices are really the most powerful. So finding the right people to share your challenges with, and if you have a kiddo that likes to talk, it's a good opportunity to give them the stage. Visuals really help. And this visual here is a character version of Olivia actually in kindergarten. This was our playground at our school that was mulched. She was not able to access it. So she had a special table that kind of sat above the playground, and she had bubbles and other things that she could play with. I'll tell you a little bit more about some of these visuals and where you can find them, but I think it paints a good picture of how that actually really feels for the kiddo. So, you know, when you're going in for your IEP conversation, and the suggestion is, oh, we have this bucket of things that you can do in this said area, you know, how that really feels for a child. And, you know, I also like to share that inclusive, when you build something for the highest level of need, it truly benefits everyone. And, you know, the kid that breaks their leg, the grandparent that comes for grandparent day that uses a wheelchair, they are also able to benefit from this experience of inclusivity, not just the one child that attends the school that's in a wheelchair. And I think sharing that is helpful for people to understand that they're not necessarily making this change just for one person, that making this change means that all people will now be able to play in this space together. Connecting with community leaders, I think this is a really, really big one, is finding out who people know. I mentioned my story with Variety KC, and that was a way that we got into the community. But then when we needed to tackle the school systems, it was finding somebody on the school board, finding the superintendent, And so kind of looking at those people and who knows them, it's a really good way. And I agree with, maybe not coming in hot on your tough days, because sometimes you're going to have those. So, try to find a time when you feel like you can take it on and have that conversation. Paying attention to timing. So different playgrounds and different schools are up for upgrades at different points in time. And actually, this was really relevant for our school with Olivia. I was able to work with the board to prioritize our school's playground upgrade before we were actually due, because of the fact that there was this imminent need, meaning a student that couldn't access the playground. So, those are conversations that can be had because they all are on a rotation. And so, hey, look at my school because my child can't actually access it. So can we push school XYZ out a year or two so that we can accommodate the greatest need here right now? It is something that you can do, and it's something that can be done within communities as well. It is true that sometimes you have to be the squeaky wheel. I know this one's really hard, especially for CMD families, because you're already overburdened with all the things. But, I used to keep in my calendar to check back in, because sometimes you hear nothing. And so for me, that was a way to just say, hey, I sent you this email on this date, wanted to follow back up. And I found that when they know you're not going away, they tend to sometimes pay attention and go easy on yourself, because sometimes the answer is no. And Olivia heard no, I heard no. It's hard to hear no and not feel frustrated, but I think it's okay if you do feel frustrated, and it's okay to take a minute and be a little bit frustrated at the world, and then come back tomorrow when you're ready. What is new for the foundation? I wanted to share this, and I'm really excited about this. Is a children's book series featuring this is our Olivia here in cartoon form. And the first book, we have 3 manuscripts drafted, but the first book will launch hopefully in late September. And that image that I shared on the playground is actually an image from the book. And we are targeting schools with this book. It will be available for everyone to purchase. It will be available on Amazon. And those visuals, I think, are helpful. It tells the story of how Olivia felt and what she did about it, and how the playground became inclusive. And you can see here, we are striving to make wood chips a bad word, so that people understand, like, really why this does not work, and include those visuals of Olivia's wheelchair spinning, and also a visual of us pushing her out of the wood chips. So this is I think, a resource that can be used at your schools. I wrote this story in conjunction with Olivia's teacher, who is also writing an educational guide, so that it's something that can be presented to a school district. This is also still a work in progress, but similar to Jill, kind of these are our recommendations for how you approach a playground. And there's not this straightforward list, but I think it's just something that you can take and have a conversation with. Okay, finally, coming soon, we are continuing to update Olivia's Welcome Garden. And that's something that I wanted to point out to you all as well, because you don't have to do it all at one time. We couldn't do it all at one time. And when you're looking for funding and it's $400,000, that's daunting. And so you can do different pieces at one time. And this is a photo up here that is wheelchair accessible, that will also contain the names of kiddos that have gone to the Britton Center that have passed away. And so it's meant to be symbolic. It's meant to be inclusive. It's meant to be fun and bring joy as well. And we're looking at expanding our partnerships in the community, in addition to putting out resources. I'm going to end there with a quote from Olivia, which is that everyone deserves a chance to play. And I think if we all stick together, there are some great speakers on here and great resources. We can continue to make that a reality. Thank you guys for your time.
All right, next we're going to take some questions from our audience. I will go ahead and kick off one. So looking at the future of adaptive play and accessible playgrounds, do you think that starts more with policies and legislation, or do you think more of our community, they kind of need to see more of our community step up and see that? So where do you see as the future is sparking real change?
I can hop in there. I think from my perspective, um, we want it on the federal level. We want the policy to be inclusive, but that I think is just the slowest moving process possible. And it takes a lot of people and a lot of time and a lot of energy, which not to say it's bad, but just if the change that I think is going to be most impactful is coming from communities, and it's coming from people who educate themselves and attend stuff like this and are learning what to ask for. I think that prompts some of the most impactful change, just from my perspective.
I agree with that. And I would also say, one of the ways in which Olivia was successful was starting with our own playground at our home school, but having that connection with the superintendent and the board. Our school district now has a policy in place that any new playground or any playground upgrade priority will be made to make it accessible. And so, I agree, Jill, like we got to go to the federal level. But it's a hard nut to crack. And, I think the combination of things will help with that. But I do want to encourage people that you can make a difference in your own community that's actually very significant. So don't feel like you can't do something as well.
And I'll just chime in quickly because with Magical Bridge, each of our playgrounds is so well attended and, getting about, like I said, about 20,000 guests every month. And so it stimulates an economy. The families come out for it. So what that does is it shows by example that when you do build it for everyone, it really does serve everyone. And so we almost like we aren't going to, we're a nonprofit, so we're not going to get into the law making, but it shows by example, and that speaks volumes. So now we have an update to our white paper with Stanford University, and we do hope to put some meat to the fact that when you design for everyone, it isn't an us them, it's really the whole community now. So I think showing by example the popularity and attendance of a well-designed space is important.
All right. Does anyone want to leave us with any last thoughts or comments?
Well, I can't help myself but invite everybody to come and play with us. I know we are a little heavy in the Northern California area, but please get to know us, and we welcome any and all guests of your nice group here to come and see us at Magical Bridge.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I always love getting to do this. I think it's such a cool topic, and the people who are in the space genuinely care about what they're doing. So, I mean, anyone you meet in the circle who works in the world of inclusive play, I think you find is pretty passionate about it. So, thank you for having us.
Yes, and thanks for the good work you do. All of you, actually, really nice to be on this group together. Wonderful way to start the weekend. So, wishing everyone a magical rest of your day and continuing the good work.
Great. Okay, I think that's all the questions that we have. Avery, do you want to take us out?
All right, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our speakers for being here and sharing and for your willingness to share your expertise and insight with us. We appreciate each and every one of you for all that you do, all that you're passionate about, and we're looking forward to the future for inclusive outdoor play, but inclusivity as a whole for our society. Make sure to mark your calendars for our next webinar, our financial planning with a disability webinar, October 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us at outreach@carecmd.org. We're more than happy to answer any questions, whether that be related to the webinar or other CareCMD programming. If you would like to also reach out to our speakers, reach out to our outreach email, and we'd be happy to connect you all. If you found this content valuable, we'd appreciate it if you'd consider a gift to ensure that we can continue to provide these beneficial and supportive resources to our community. Scan the QR code on your screen or head to carecmd.org/2024 to show your support for CareCMD. It will go a long way in helping us continue the work of our mission to advance research and empower the lives of those living with CMD. To keep the conversation going, we encourage you to share with us what you learned today by tagging us at CureCMD on all social media platforms, and you can use the hashtag CMD Outdoor Play.